For our second session today, we look at one of the fastest growing causes of cargo crime, fake carriers. Or maybe we should say due diligence, because so many of these crimes could be so easily prevented. We've just been hearing about how technology is making supply chains more resilient. Now we're going to hear about how criminals are also leveraging the power of IT to achieve their own goals. Joining us to discuss this are two experts with considerable experience in this field. Firstly, we'll hear a presentation from Frederick de Keyser of international transport crimes investigation company Wim de Keyser, who's been dealing with the consequences of cargo crime and offering loss prevention advice for some 20 years. After Frederick's presentation, we'll have a Q&A with Frederick and also Andy Griffiths. Andy leads the Fake Carrier Intelligence Group, and we'll hear more about the group's efforts to manage these risks. Gentlemen, let me welcome you both up onto the stage, and Frederick, we look forward to your presentation.
Good morning. Thank you for attending. So thanks for the introduction. You already told we are specialized in theft investigations and fraud investigations in transport mostly. I'm doing this for 20 years now, so we have a lot of experience in the company. Today I'm going to talk about one specific modus operandi, which criminals use more and more these days. It's the fake carrier frauds. So first I will address transport crime in general, some figures, some general information also to situate the fake carrier frauds within the spectrum of the criminals. So first of all, we need statistic data to have an overview on transport crime, which is already a problem because in most European countries there's a huge lack of statistic data about transport crime because it's not being inventorized by governments in most countries. Here we have a figure, 8.3 billion euros, the turnover, if you like, of the transport criminals per year. This is a huge underestimation, in fact, because this figure goes back a long way. Years ago, the European Parliament produced this figure, but now it's a multitude. We can imagine also as discussed in the previous presentation. This is only the part, the value of the goods which are being stolen, but there's also the consequential losses, of course, which can be 2 to 5 times the actual figure. Yeah, the cargo thefts are not really a priority for law enforcement, unfortunately, which we can understand to some point, of course, because there are other issues also. But it has a big impact on the economy. We spoke about the value of the stolen goods, but also the consequential losses, taxes, which are not being collected. And of course, we see that many transport crime gangs are directly linked to organized crime, which are also active in violent crimes, narcotics trafficking, and even terrorism we have seen in the past. So it can be linked to very serious criminals. And so the fake carrier frauds become a more and more important part of these major incidents. So when we talk about transport crime in major incidents, this means the the thefts of full truckloads, half truckloads, important burglaries in warehouses, etc. And there we see that the fake carrier frauds are taking more and more important part of these crimes. So we have three major issues, and we will focus now on the third, the fake carrier frauds. These are some of our own statistics we make every year. Based on the cases we investigate ourselves. As you can see, this is of course not a full image of all crime, but it gives a pretty good idea of what is going on. And there you can see the blue part are the fake carrier frauds, which are about 1/4 of all the major transport incidents and losses of truckloads, basically. So we are focusing now on the fake carrier frauds. These, we have just seen this, just to show that it is increasing. We have about 25% now of the major incidents. Back in 2018, it was like 15%, and before it was even less than 10%. So it's really increasing over the years, and also in value, because the criminals try to focus on high value goods, and they are becoming better and better in this. So what is it in fact, a fake carrier fraud? The freight exchange sites, most people will know how it works, I think. So you can put an ad as a shipper or transport company on the sort of an eBay for transport. You put an ad, we have a transport to do from A to B, who is interested in doing it. We have some of the major, most important freight exchange sites listed up there. The problem is, of course, that also the criminals can become a member or create an account on these sites, and they can choose among these ads which transports might be interesting for them, and they can apply to the company who puts on the ad, the shipper or the main carrier. Most of the time, they contact the carrier or the shipper via email or cell phone, stating, hey, we saw your ad on Teleroute or Timocom, and we are interested in doing the transport. Can we help? And we have an interesting price, of course. Not too interesting, because then it will be obvious, of course, but this is how it works. And the carrier says, okay, very good, we were looking for someone to do this transport, let's go ahead. They ask some documents, of course, transport license, insurance certificates, etc. We will talk about this a little bit later. And then the transport can go on. This is a quite recent example. So it's a transport from Germany to Romania. There's a CMR waybill being drafted. Upon the collection of the goods, the truck arrives, the goods are loaded, everything is checked. The license plate corresponds, of course, because it's the criminals who announced this truck will be coming with these license plates, etc. So everything is fine, and the truck leaves. Only it never arrives at destination. And usually these are international transports which take a few days. So it takes a few days also to notice the problem that the goods have not arrived. What happens in the meantime that that they are waiting for the goods to arrive? The criminals they deviate the cargo to, let's say, in a recent example, to a warehouse in Bulgaria where the goods are being unloaded. Here you can see a photo of the warehouse. So it's an abandoned warehouse. Nothing to find there. Not anyone who is renting the place or cameras or whatsoever. Here are some more photos of the unloading place. And at this place, the goods are being reloaded or are being transshipped to another truck, and then they are gone for good. No chance almost to find anything back again. This is another location where recently the goods were delivered by the carrier, because another point maybe, the criminals also use genuine subcontractors. They also find a carrier to carry out the transport for them. So that might be a carrier in good faith who is collecting the goods and bringing them not to the end destination, but to Bulgaria in this example, because their principals, the criminals in fact, have changed the address along the way to deliver in Bulgaria, and there we will take over and go to Germany, but they won't go there, of course. The criminals use fake documents, of course. So in the first stage, where the contract is being made between the shipper and the carrier, they ask for documents, insurance certificate. Oh, no problem, they can provide. This is an example of a forged Hungarian transport license. Very hard to detect that this is not correct for the transport planners, because they are under pressure. It has to go fast. These are transport licenses which were used by criminals recently, which are fake, or which might be actually genuine ones. Can be, if you can see the watermark, it can be downloaded from the freight exchange sites, these documents. So the criminals can also download these documents of a company, and then they can use the name of this company and the documents they just have at hand. Insurance policy, no problem, can be fake document, or as we will see a little bit later, it can be a real insurance policy, but without any coverage, of course, if the company is conducting criminal activities. It won't be covered by any insurance, of course. This is interesting to see the evolution of the criminals. At first, the first generation of fake carrier frauds, the criminals just invented the name of transport company. They said, hello, we are Transport de Keizer, and we want to transport your goods. Company does not exist. But this type of modus operandi we don't see anymore very often, because it's of course very easy to detect. If you just simply go to the website or the trade register, you can see that this company doesn't exist. The second one we still see, so they abuse the identity of an existing carrier by just changing. They take the letterhead from the website maybe, or from documents they found. They can download all the insurance documents, transport license from freight exchange site or internet, and they create a domain name which really resembles the real domain name of the company. As you can see an example, they just switched one letter. Very hard to see that there's something is wrong. And the third generation, I would say, of crimes, of fake carrier crimes, the criminals just take over existing haulage companies, like the really small haulage companies which exist. There are tens of thousands of companies for instance, in Eastern Europe. They which are not active anymore, or don't have a lot of activity. They just take over officially the company. They have all they need: VAT number, trade register, maybe even an account on Timocom or Teleroute or another freight exchange site. And of course, then it's really hard to detect this, because the fact that the company was taken over is published only maybe a few weeks, a few months later, and publicly available, this information. So nobody knows that the company is in fact taken over by criminals. Hard to detect. We have seen an example where a company was taken over by the new owner or manager was a Ukrainian young girl. We haven't had an example where the manager was a homeless person. They just borrowed his ID or something and put the company in his name. Of course, no trace to the real owner or to the people behind it. A little bit more about the email addresses the criminals use. So they often use the free email accounts like Hotmail, Gmail, because you can put in everything the company name at Hotmail. Many are available, easy to create in 5 minutes, and very hard, if not impossible, to detect who is behind it, because the large companies like Google, Microsoft, they will not disclose these details. Even for law enforcement, it's very hard to find out who's really behind an email address. Sometimes the criminals use real domain names, let's say. Then we can find out the IP addresses, which led in some cases to some successes, because it can the IP address of their computer can be detected. They might have been in a public place, in a gas station typically, where they use the Wi-Fi, and there might be CCTV cameras, so there might be a trace of to the criminals in that case. But the criminals get smarter. They use the Gmail accounts as discussed, but they can also register a domain name in a few minutes via these companies like Namecheap, where you can register a domain name in a few minutes without being disclosed who is really behind it. Like this is a recent example, also with the email address, which was mentioned before. So the criminals registered these domain names with maximum privacy settings, hard to find out who is behind it, and hard to take down these, because they had really a website on this domain name. They just copied the website exactly from the existing company to this fake domain name. So even if you would check, it would add up that the company has this domain name, and it's you can take down this fake website, but it will take a few days, weeks, and then the criminals are using again another name, another domain name, another company name to carry on with their crimes. Now let's talk about the consequences of these fake carrier frauds in terms of liability. It can be really dangerous for the main carrier who subcontracted to the fake carrier, because they might be liable for the full value of the lost goods, not only the limited liability for a CMR carrier, but the full value of the goods, because the carrier is liable for the acts of a subcontractor, in this case a criminal, without knowing, but it's a criminal. And in case of gross negligence or willful misconduct, which is the case, they will be liable for the whole value of the goods, which can have serious consequences. Here an example. So the value of the goods is 450,000 euros. The CMR limitation would normally be for the carrier, he would be liable up to 125,000 euros, because the weight of the goods is about 12.5 tons, 10 euros per ton. But given the scenario of the fake carrier fraud, he will have to pay 450, which is 325,000 more. And not all insurers, transport CMR insurers, will cover this risk. This will be the gross negligence, so the unlimited liability will not be covered, maybe for some carriers, or the insurers will simply exclude completely the fake carrier scenario, in which case the transport company themselves will have to pay the complete amount, which will be a big problem in some cases, and also for the shipper, of course, who subcontracted to this main carrier. What can we do to prevent these frauds? We have developed our own warning system. We have a list now of, I think, 500, 600 company names which were used or abused by criminals. And every week, every day, there are new ones coming up. And yeah, this is part of the list, but the most important is our warning emails. So as soon as we are informed that new names of fake carriers are being used by these criminal organizations, we put out a warning mail to our contacts within the transport industry, warning for these new frauds. As you can see, this was an example on the 7th of February, 3 new names in one day. So, and this continues every week, every day. It's key to be fast, because the criminals will use the name of this fake transport company for a few days, 4 days, 5 days, a week, maybe 10 days, and then they switch to another name. Just as soon as the word is out, they have already changed. So it's very important to be fast. And this way, some of the frauds are being avoided, because the transport companies or shippers detect that they have to be careful with these names which are circulated. Another thing we can do, we have the fake carrier intelligence group with Andy, which was created by shippers and also extended with insurers, logistic operations, investigators like ourselves, and we try to exchange our experiences, to see what's going on, to react, to join our efforts, basically to fight against this type of crime, and also to include law enforcement to tackle this issue. Yeah, about law enforcement, as said, this is unfortunately a very low priority, because there's no violence involved, for instance, but nevertheless it's a very important aspect of crime, I find. But there are many problems for law enforcement, because it's international type of crime. You have to cooperate between the different countries, and this might be a problem or a challenge for Europol to address this. We can see, for example, if a carrier who is the victim of this type of fake carrier fraud, they make a police report in Belgium, for instance, or in other countries. Sometimes law enforcement even refuses to make a report, because they don't understand really what's going on. They don't really think there's a crime going on in some cases. So it's a lot of work to be done on this level. However, recently there was a seminar with Europol, and on this seminar we were also invited to present our views on this type of crime and now they are looking into it and see how they can work together to tackle this type of crime. Also the cooperation between the law enforcement and the private sector, like ourselves, investigators, is very important in my point of view, because we have a lot of information about these different cases which happen in different countries, and if we put it together, we can see that there's always the same gangs behind these crimes, and we can put these things really together, and which could help the criminal investigations. We already talked about this. The consequences are huge, of course, in terms of value of stolen goods, but also consequential losses, productions which has to be shut down, maybe risk for food safety, medicines. So as you can imagine, there are just a few examples, but there are many consequences to this type of crime. So a big challenge ahead, but let's see what happens. Let's hope we can align with Europol and that we can advance in this struggle. That's it. Thanks for listening.
Frederick, many thanks for that. Do come and join us. There we go, for a couple of quick questions. And once again, do pop your hand up in the air very clearly or stand up if you'd like one of the EMEA team to bring a microphone over you. We'd love to have any questions. I'll start with some. Thank you again, Frederick, for that presentation. You were mentioning that criminals have easy access to these freight platforms. How is this?
Well, the freight platforms, they say they do a lot of checks, and they might do some checks, but as explained in the different generations of modus operandi, the criminals, they might use existing companies, so in this case it's hard or even impossible to detect. And we also see that these checks are not being done properly in the first place, so there is a real problem. And of course the freight platforms like to have as many transport companies being a member as possible, so to have a large group of transport companies, and this is a problem because every day there are new members and they can't control everything. And the criminals, yeah, for them it's really interesting to be a member also because they have access to all these transport offers.
I mean, what could the platforms do more or better with the checks?
Well, they claim that they check everything, and they might do some of them, but we always said it's impossible to check to find that something is wrong, because the criminals, they evolve and they manage to avoid if there's a really existing company which has become a member, even if they check everything, it will add up and they will still be on the freight platform. What we have proposed to the freight platforms is to take some level of responsibility. If everything is checked, they allow the member to enter the platform, and then something goes wrong, that they also assume some level of responsibility, but this is not the case for now.
And before I come to you, Andy, just one last question on the platforms, Frederick. You talked about generally that it's considered low priority by law enforcement, these sorts of crimes. But in terms of the platform, is there any support there from law enforcement?
Well, the platforms, they support us. We can ask them questions if we have a specific case. They have a lot of data. Also, some of the platforms can check which members have looked into a specific ad. So this is really useful to check who has looked at this ad. But it might be 100 companies who have looked into it. So it takes a little bit of work to find out who might be involved in the crime. And also the criminals, they use the name of a specific transport company who might be a member, but they use the login of another member to check the ads. So it's not so easy to detect.
Andy, what would you say and thank you for joining us, welcome. What are the greatest challenges, would you say, when dealing with bogus carrier investigations?
Oh, that's a really great question. I mean, there are numerous challenges. The first challenge is getting or encouraging businesses to report the incidents in the first place. There are a lot of considerations around reporting. Many brands, many transport operators, many manufacturers are very reluctant to share information from the outset because of the brand reputational or competitor issues that may arise from that reporting. And for many reasons, incidents go unreported. So to give a recent example, I dealt with a supply chain issue where a specific location was targeted 4 times in one day by the same carrier. When we asked around with industry peers to understand, was this an isolated problem? Was it part of a wider issue? It became very quickly apparent that the same identity was responsible for in excess of 30 similar issues in that same week, but we just weren't aware of it because there was a reluctance to share. And that reluctance to share also impacts on law enforcement's law enforcement response. Because they're not aware of the issue, they're not aware of cross-border criminality, because the information sharing networks just aren't there. So, the biggest observation from what I've seen in the last sort of 12 months or so is that general reluctance to share is really prohibiting us from, gaining a proper understanding of what's truly going on out there. And also, it means that we're not seeing emerging threats and risks on the horizon before they occur. So we're always reacting to an event after it's happened. So we need to get proactive, we need to share, and we need to overcome some of the barriers that we're seeing.
And how can you address that reluctance then? How can you overcome those barriers?
Well, I think, the formation of the Fake Carrier Group has gone a long way to address some of those issues. So we now work in collaboration with a number of industry partners, including law enforcement, insurance, transport operators, and investigators like Fredericks and his team. We do so in a confidential environment where we're able to share and exchange views on recent incidents, but without compromising that data or sharing within a wider network. And that being able to collaborate and communicate in that confidential environment is so important. And we're already seeing greater visibility in the numbers of incidents and also the number of reports. And
are there any other benefits that the industry is receiving from the Fake Carrier Intelligence Group so far that you can outline?
Now we've got the conversation going. The core focus of our group is to raise awareness, and with the support of the TAPA EMEA, the group has now been adopted as a special interest group. So we're seeing greater collaboration, greater communication of risk and the latest threats and challenges. And slowly but surely we're starting to talk, which is always a good thing.
And Frederick, I'll come back to you in just a moment. Just one more question for you, Andy, first, though. We've talked about the benefits of increased instant reporting, but is the new TAPA EMEA intelligence system going to help the group's strategy?
Absolutely. I see the TIS reporting tool as being pivotal to the success of our group, but also in the reduction of fake carrier incidents. The number of visible reported incidents is a significant gap for us as an industry, I believe. And I see TIS and the ability of industry to report in a confidential way, where the intelligence and data is managed with integrity. I think that is crucial to the success and future of our core aims and objectives.
Frederick, maybe just quickly talk about GDPR as well and privacy rules. Are those complicating matters at all?
Yes, but in terms of our warning system, these are names of companies which are not subject to GDPR, so no problem there. But the intelligence might go further, like names of drivers, which can be fake names or real names. The technology would allow even face scans to put cases together, but we have to address first, indeed, these GDPR issues. What can be done, what can be done. So indeed, it's an issue to take into account.
And we have a question from the floor. Perhaps you could introduce yourself, and then I don't know who you want to address the question to, or maybe it's open.
Yes, thank you. I'm Eric from Unilever, and those incidents drive me crazy as well. One question to Frederick. You said 99% of the incidents have been closed by the police without further prosecution. Could you please share one success story? How criminals have been put into jail or something like this?
Yes, there have been. There in some countries there are police officers who noted this type of crime and who go deep into it, and they have successes. So sometimes they discover a warehouse somewhere where these shipments are being unloaded or loaded, and sometimes we can recover goods this way. Unfortunately, this is an exception. There's a case that we are working on now in France. In fact, we are focusing on the people behind the fake companies, which are of another nationality. But we found out that the criminals are French. They have criminal records, other types of crimes. To point out that these criminals are involved in other types of crimes. But now the French law enforcement is going into this case, really, and we have hopes to catch these criminals and maybe some goods, but these guys will be caught for sure, I think.
Frederick, I have a more technical question. You mentioned the warning system and the emails that you send out, but the warning system as well. Who can access that? Can anybody access that? How can they access that? How does it work?
Yes, we send this out to our contacts, so people in the transport industry. You can simply request to be added to the recipients. Of course, we won't do it for just anybody which we don't know, but for insurers, companies within the transport industry, we can add to our distribution list. We also distribute to the associations of transport companies, insurers, and they distribute to their members. So there's a lot of people who receive it, and the more the better, I would say.
And just before we wrap up, let me ask you both a final question. You've painted a picture of many, many challenges. How hopeful are you of the situation improving, and what's your sort of vision for where things could go? Maybe, Andy, I'll start with you and finish with you, Frederick.
Yeah, I mean, my view is in the last 12 months we've made significant progress. We've highlighted the gaps and issues as we've discussed today already, but also we've identified areas of future collaboration, and we're now starting to work more proactively with law enforcement and partner agencies. So the future is really bright. We've just got to talk and we've got to share, but in a way that's confidential. And maintains the integrity of business's brand.
Frederick, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yes, indeed, correct. It's just a really easy way, if I can say, for the criminals to steal cargo. They don't have to go out on the road, so they will focus on this. So awareness is key, I think. Everybody needs to be aware that this exists, because we still encounter transport companies who have never heard of this before, so this is really important. As Andy said, we're working on cooperation between industries and between law enforcement, and that's the way to go, I think.
Well, thank you both very much. I'm sure you'll both be around during some of the breaks if anybody wants to come and talk to you further about it, but it's been a fantastic question and answer session. Thank you both very much, and for your presentation as well, Frederick.
Thank you.
Thank you.